Warning: the following content may contain elements that are not suitable for some audiences. Accordingly, viewer discretion is advised. Good
Hello,
Friday
everyone.
evening, everybody.
Hi, Carol.
Hello, Carol.
How are you doing?
Oh, I'm sick, but I'm slowly getting over it.
Good.
Makes
I'm
me
not
sound
good
like
at
I
you
got a
sick, getting
big
over
boy
it.
voice. Oh my.
How are you
So
doing, Carol?
I am I'm ecstatic, We are T minus 7 days from this exact moment of H. Holmes versus Jack the Ripper and Jeff Mudgett, his great grandson, being on the show. So I'm super excited about that. I'm loving his book, Bloodstains Redo. Um, so um, anyway, yeah. So we have kind of a cold case and kind of not. Um, we have one Teresita Besa that basically her spirit or ghost is the one that caught her murderer. Um, they did not have any leads to go on. Um, and Yeah, they were at a dead end. This has been covered before in the 90s on Unsolved Mysteries. Um, More than once, I think they actually aired it. Um, but The location was in Chicago, Illinois on February 21st of 1977 is when all of this started to blossom, so to speak, for as where it is now. Um, so to give you some details, and then as always, I let Miss Phoenix take the wheel and take us below the surface, Captain.
Carol,
Um,
you're doing good, by the way. I hope you are as well.
yeah, Phoenix, you got some horrible weather right now.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, we're getting hit pretty hard.
Hopefully, no damage. I mean, or at least minimal.
Right.
So we have Teresita Besa, born in the Philippines in 1929 and moved to the United States in 1960s to study music. She later became a respiratory therapist at Edgewater Hospital in Chicago, Illinois. Quiet and unassuming, she was the last person one would expect to be a victim of violent crime. However, at 10 p.m. on the night of February 21st, 1977, the fire department was called to put out a fire in her apartment. In that blaze, they found her nude body under a burning mattress with a butcher knife buried into her chest. Investigators believe that the fire had been set to cover up the murder. There was evidence that she was the victim of sexual crime. The autopsy, however, determined that she had not been raped. There seemed to be no apparent motive for this crime. Investigators could also find very little physical evidence, as most of it had been destroyed by the fire. One piece of evidence that was found, however, was a memo that stated, quote, "Get theater tickets for A period S." Um, so this case is honestly one that I mean, I believe in things like this happening. I've never encountered it yet, but we have two experts on two separate spectrums that this could fall into. We have Skydor Entertainment co-owner and the owner of All Out Paranormal, Rex, and his son Chame is joining him. So we have him. Hello, Rex.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me.
And, and Rex is also a 30-year veteran of law enforcement. On the other side, we have our one and only shaman, Brendan Cooper, who is joining us remote from a location in Deadwood as he is doing mentor training at Sacred Mountain Retreat Center. Hello, Brendan. He is
Ha!
sleeping. The
Ah!
gnome is sleeping.
Ah! Ah! I'm on a
So I'm gonna
podcast.
I, I'm gonna let you explode what's coming Sunday before your show. Before we get into this, what's coming to the network?
Oh! Oh, sorry. I was. Yeah, so. Sacred Mountain. Wow! Sacred Mountain
Hi,
Retreat.
Evelyn.
No. Sacred Mountain Retreat up here in Deadwood, South Dakota, with
Hi, Kat.
12,000 feet of snow. Will be doing their first podcast on Skydor
Hi, Carol.
Entertainment. Uh,
Yes, yes.
I don't even know what time because I'm in so many different time zones. I don't even know what time it is right now.
It'll be 5:45 Central Standard Time, which would be 6:45 over there. Or was
Well,
it 5:45 their start? So
no,
we'll figure it out.
it'd be 4:45. I don't know. Hey, just keep watching all day.
Yeah.
We don't care
Yes.
what's on here. If nothing's on here, just sit all day.
All day.
Absolutely. Oh man. I can look it up real quick just to make
Well, yeah,
sure.
I'm going through to see here.
Sunday,
See here.
Kathy.
Six
So
forty-five they go live.
6:45
Hi, George.
before Shaman Sundays. So it ought to be pretty. Hello, Carol. I just saw that. Ought to be pretty fun. So yeah,
This
check out
is
that.
on Sunday, Kathy Arnett. And Phoenix wants to tell you something.
Yes. So, Kathy, I just found out about your gift to me, and I almost started crying when they told me. I found out literally like 15 minutes before the show started,
Yeah.
somewhere in there, and I almost started crying. I think that is very, very sweet of you. You certainly did not have to forward those drawings to me, but I accept that, and I am overwhelmed with. I just think it's awesome. I have no words. It really meant a lot to me, and the timing of it. For somebody I know on here to just do such a random act of kindness. I mean, the timing was just impeccable, and so I just wanted to acknowledge that and just tell you from the bottom of my heart how much I appreciate that, and I appreciate you watching. I appreciate you having Rex send the pictures to me, and it's just awesome. So thank you.
So we are talking about the case of Teresita Basa, and
Hi,
just to kind of recap and go over, there was very little physical evidence. They found her, the fire department found her under a mattress that was burning, and she had a butcher knife in her chest. The only piece of information they found was a piece of paper that said, "Get uh, get theater tickets for AS." The reason it is a spirit or ghost or however, uh, is actually the one that pointed to the murder, and we will get further into that with Phoenix. But that's why we have uh, Rex on for All Out Paranormal. Andy's a 30-year law enforcement vet, as well as Brandon Cooper in the shamanistic side of things, just because it is such an odd cold. It's not a cold case, but it was a cold case for quite a while, and aired in on Unsolved Mysteries in the early '90s. So with that, Phoenix, take her away.
Okay. um, okay, so basically where he left off was that they had just found the note. Um, so anyway, it took him 5 months. Y'all are gonna have me laughing too much. I'm trying to be serious. Oh my gosh, you gotta love these guys. They're awesome.
Welcome to the train wreck.
That's right.
Anyway, like Dave said, see, I can't tell y'all apart anymore.
Because they look just alike.
Right.
I know.
Most of the evidence was destroyed in the fire. That note about picking up the theater tickets was the only clue they had. It's been for well over 5 months is how I've seen it in a couple different stories. And but I have not found an exact time, but they had nothing to go on. So finally, a friend of Teresita, her name was, I'm going to butcher the birth name, Remy Bias, but she went by Remy Chua, and her husband's name was Joe. Remy began to have dreams and visions about what happened to Teresita. And one night, she lay down to take a nap, and Remy's husband said that she began to speak to him in a completely different voice, um, claiming to be Teresita and telling him what happened and begging him to go to the police.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when Remy woke up, she had no memory of this, and Joe did not go to the police, claiming, there was no evidence of this, and, he didn't think anybody would really listen to this. So Remy had this happen a second time, and this time the voice of Teresita seemed to be a little more
Hi, Lance.
upset. Hi, Lance. A little more upset and, questioning, why haven't you gone to the police yet? And, what happened. Um, you need to tell the police what happened, and gave the identity of the perpetrator. His name was Alan Showery. Now, Alan Showery happened to work at the same hospital as Teresita. She worked at Edgewater Hospital in Chicago, Illinois, and he worked in a different department from her, but they did work in the same place, the same hospital. Now, Remy Chua had at one point in time worked there with them and had worked with both of them at different points in times. But at this point in time, she was no longer at the hospital. Um, After the second time that she began to speak as Teresita, they did go to police. So the detective's name was, hold on, because it's an interesting, Statula. Is that how you would pronounce it, Dave?
Spatula.
Stat, some, he, anyway, he's the one who took the case on. And, of course, it seemed like a crazy idea to everybody at the time, to hear this woman's possessing them and, are we really going to look at this or not for evidence? But they really had nothing else to go on at all. So I guess, they just kind of took the attitude, what the heck? Let's just go with it and see what we come up with. So they brought in Alan Showery and questioned him. And at first he said he had never been there, da 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 da. Then his story changed to, well, yes, I went over to fix her television, but realized I didn't have the right tools. So I was going to leave and go home, and said that's what he did, and that was it. He hadn't been back. So basically, he said, well, yeah, I was there, but I had nothing to do with that. I was already gone. In talking to co-workers, they did verify that, yes, he was supposed to go over and work on the TV from what they had heard. But the detective did not really buy his story. And his name also matched the initials left on the note. So now the detective was starting to kind of buy into the visions that Miss Chewy was.
And it was what she was using Remy for, the speaking out what she wanted. It was not just to catch him, it was what her earthly body was missing. And that was her jewelry. And it was missing on the corpse. I think she froze up. She So we go back to the detective, and talking to co-workers, confirming it, and they were looking for the jewelry after Teresita's murder, and a voice that Joe had only heard one time before, and said that it was Teresita. She wanted her jewelry back that was taken after her murder. Um, so then she, Stula or Satula went and didn't believe his story about fixing the television and stuff like that. And so he contacted Showery's girlfriend and asked if Showery had given her any jewelry recently. And she stated that he had. And she agreed to let Teresita's friends and family inspect it. And they confirmed that it was actually Teresita's jewelry.
Correct.
And confronted with the evidence.
And $30 in cash,
Yep. and
according
and
to
then
some reports.
and then confronted with the evidence, Showery confessed to Teresita's murder. He said that after he left her apartment, he had made a plan to return and rob her. When he returned, he said that she let him back in, and when she turned around to lock the door, he grabbed her from behind, attacked her. He disrobed her to make it look like a sexual crime. He then took her mattress, placed it over the body, and set it afire. Despite his confession, Showery pleaded not guilty to Teresita's murder. And there's more to go on about the whole of the case and the trial, which we will get into. in a minute. But here is some photographic evidence of the fire in the apartment, the aftermath. Right where those two pieces of paper are in the middle of the floor, that is right where the mattress was set afire with Teresita underneath of it. Here it is from another angle. The fire had to have been so hot that that French door just shattered. So I guess I have heard things. I've read enough about things like this and possible talisman, maybe, uh, especially the one of it looks like an earthly rock to me that's on the cord. Um, uh, I guess what do you guys believe as far as her coming back almost strictly for the jewelry? She didn't even care if he got caught, really. She just wanted the jewelry. What do you guys think from a paranormal standpoint?
Mm. I didn't know who you were talking to there at first. Rex, you want to lead this one off?
I can. Um, Unfortunately, this has happened more um, than people think, where either the person was astral projecting or the victim is channeling through them. Um, it, it's, it, I mean, it had to be her channeling her to get all that information spot on. I mean, the detectives had no leads, nothing, and it's amazing. And whether people believe it or not, it's happened to quite a bit. If you want to go out there and read about some of them, I mean, it's happened with cases in New York City, all around the United States. And but I truly think that she was channeling through her best friend, because it became a cold case. Nothing was happening, and
Yep.
her spirit was very, unrest, and she wanted it to be taken care of.
Yeah, because
That's where I see it
she was
from.
the only one here. I mean, she left her family and everything back in the Philippines to come here.
Right.
Well, and the first time a ghost conviction has ever happened was in July of 1897. Um, and that was the very first time that any type of spectral evidence was presented to a Supreme Court case. So, I mean, stuff like this has been going on since the 1800s.
Oh, wow.
And it is, you can look up the case. It was a case of a broken neck, a woman's C1 and C2 vertebrae were smashed out, or well, they were broken. But if you want to look up this case, it is the case of, hang on, I had it wrote down. Edward Trout Shue. So Edward Shue, and he was convicted of first degree murder solely on paranormal evidence and channeling. So this
Wow.
has happened a lot. Yep.
I'm surprised they must keep it just for the most part hush hush, because back then the art of paranormal investigating was kind of a faux pas from what I've understood,
Right.
in the years that I've been friends with Rex and looking into it and stuff. Like, it was not a recognized science for a long time.
Creepy
Um,
door.
Yes.
My daughter.
uh,
Oh, I shouldn't have said that.
Right. You should just let it.
she said if she had not been even working with the guy at the time, they never would have gotten him. What, and I was going to get to this, and this is the importance of mediums. Kathy Arnott just said was her friend a medium. She might have been, and she might have just became one. I mean, in that aspect of it.
It is possible for a spirit to temporarily possess a close friend long enough to get a story across. So she
Okay.
didn't even have to be a psychic medium. Just the close connection of two best friends was enough to build the bridge to behind the veil,
They were,
which is a theory and a possibility.
Okay.
Brandon, they were both from the Philippines, both women. So it's
And
very possible with the cultural history of the Philippines, and so
mhm.
it's possible that that played a role in it. Besides them just being close friends, having a lot of the same cultural background when it comes to this kind of stuff may have played a role. Sorry, my grandson.
He
um,
is channeling something.
It's a demon.
I'm gonna mute my mic a minute.
Now you're shut,
Um,
shut up, boy. That's what happened. That's what's happening now.
right. My other question was, because this piece here that is on the cord looks handmade. Like maybe it's something that linked her to the Philippines or back home or something like that. Could it be a possibility of a talisman?
Uh, Um, yeah, and I'll take that one. It is a huge possibility, especially in the Philippines back in the 20s, 30s. Yeah, well, even still today, they're highly, highly spiritual in their beliefs and their superstitions, talismans, protections. The shamans are all over the Philippines as well. So I mean, it could very well have been a protection or family protection or a talisman of some sort, and I really wouldn't doubt that.
Mhm.
Yeah. And Carol, I just want to take a quick second to acknowledge your um, story that you shared in the comments section, and just
Yep.
to say, I'm sorry to hear that you had to go through that. I had a somewhat similar situation, not to the point, I guess, that you went through, and it was as a coworker. But it's never a good thing to. It's not a good feeling, It's a horrible feeling, and I'm very sorry that you had to go through it. I don't think that in this particular story, though, it's an issue of her being stalked. I think it's just them knowing each other through working at the hospital. Um, and he was short on cash. And I think his whole intent originally was to rob her. And what I was finding through a couple sources is that he had only been able to find $30 cash in her possession. And so that's where he decided to take jewelry and stuff. To continue to rob her and or make it look more like a robbery. But there was no indication of her being stalked. But yes, it people it's ridiculous how many people have gone through stalking situations and stuff. So I'm very sorry for what you went through.
Yes, I me too, Carol, and I know I'm a peaceful shaman, but I'm also a violent marine. So if that ever happens again, call me. We'll turn the shaman side off.
Yep. So this is Alan Showery up here in the far upper left corner, and that's Joseph Statula. That was the investigator, and they said it flat out. There's no other way of putting it. That headline is a dead ringer. Did a voice from the grave finger a murder suspect? He confessed to her murder when they were only asking him about the jewelry. All she wanted was that jewelry back.
And well, he changed his story a few times. And yes,
Yes, it
Kathy,
is
I
done.
is very sad. $30 and a couple pieces of
Keep me
jewelry.
posted.
Um,
You want me to?
but he at
Love you.
first tried to make it out like he had nothing at all to do with it. Then when he was confronted with the jewelry and stuff, then he confessed to doing it at the police station. But when he got to court, he pled not guilty,
Yep.
and that case ended in a hung jury. Um, and so when they went to retry him, at that point, he pled guilty, and he pled guilty February 23rd, 1979. And he received 14 years, and he was paroled in 1983.
Yep. And some other things to get out there is this case was profiled hugely throughout the 90s and then further on. Um, it focused on the supernatural aspects surrounding uh, murder. It was first documented in a book called House of Horrors by Richard Weiner and a telemovie, Voices from the Grave. It served as a prime uh, evidentiary fact in a segment of on Beyond the Belief. Um, uh, like I didn't know, like Brandon said, this has been going on for years, hundreds of years, back to the 1800s. I mean, but my question is, okay, and this goes over to Rex's side of it for the law enforcement training, and that is the reason he got a hung jury, A, because he can't technically face his accuser, and I guess B, there's no scientific way, and from a legal standpoint, if I was going to defend the case, that's how I would defend the individual against murder. Maybe that's why he only got 14 years, but how other than petty larceny and theft, that's pretty much all they had him on until he opened his mouth.
Yeah, and that changed the whole picture of it when he confessed to it as well, because he was back against the wall, and they started coming out with all this evidence against him. What was he going to do? I mean, you can plead guilty or not guilty, and he pled guilty to the murder, and that's probably why you're right, a hung jury, and probably why he didn't get that many years is because of the legal and the supernatural side of it that came together. Made it a happy medium is how I look at it.
Yes.
There was justice to an extent.
No pun intended, Rex. Happy medium, really?
Yeah.
Medium.
I thought you'd catch that.
Right.
But yeah.
We're starting.
We're gonna get started.
I kind of agree. Maybe with
Okay, cool. I'll get off this.
these. And yes, Carol, I agree with you on being able to teach your daughters and be there for them. But Kathy's because people didn't believe, and I think that might have played more of a role. I think people are more open to it now, maybe than what they were back then. So I think it's possible that you had more people in the jury kind of thinking, man, this DA is kind of cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs or something.
I want to thank Brandon, guys. He's up at Sacred Mountain He's in mentor training right now. He's got to get going to training. I'm glad we got to the shamanistic side of it before you had to leave. But thank you so much for coming on, brother, and
No problem.
Yeah,
have
thank
fun
you,
up there,
Brandon.
freezing your cheeks to the snow.
Well, there's like 1,200 feet of snow. It's ridiculous. So
I
love you
know.
guys.
All
Love
right,
you
love you
Bye-bye.
too,
too.
brother. We'll
Bye,
see you.
Brandon. Thank you.
Oh, always a riot. Love him.
So here's something else that Dave and I were trying to look into
Yes.
a little bit is her remains were flown to her native country, as we said, which is the Philippines, to be buried. However, the cemetery where her remains are said to be does not necessarily appear to exist. Now, we have a little confusion there because when Dave tries to search out the cemetery, Dave, wasn't it telling you unknown location or something to that
Um.
effect?
Yep. Let me go back
It doesn't
here.
tell him, that there's a definite cemetery and where it is as such, but it leads us to believe it could be there,
Mm-hmm.
just unknown. But other sources are saying it's worded that way because it there's no known cemetery by that name. So it appears that her remains may have potentially been sent to a non-existent cemetery.
Yep. It's basically says murdered in Chicago. Maybe buried here, was uncertain of which cemetery, but it says Dumaguete Roman Catholic Cemetery in Dumaguete City, Negros Oriental Province, West Visaria, Philippines. And asterisk right next to it, it says approximate location. So what the only thing I could think is like here in Iowa, up in northeast Iowa specifically, there are a lot of what we call pioneer prairie cemeteries. They're literally out in the middle of nowhere. There's no way to get them an address, so we go to the nearest town, and that's what it's part of. And the Amish around here are noted for doing that as well. So when it says approximate location, that's what I'm honestly wondering: is it on a level B road out in the middle of nowhere, and you got to drive for a half hour to get to it?
Um, Now I have
The thing is, Carol. Carol says maybe no one can go where maybe so no one can go where the ashes truly are. The only issue is she was not completely burned to ashes. The That fire would not have gotten nearly hot enough to cremate her. A crematorium, a modern crematorium, gets upwards of 1,600 degrees, and that still does not disintegrate the bone into powder. They still have to run it through a hammer mill. So at 1,600 degrees in a closed environment versus a house fire or a living room fire with a mattress on top that has formaldehyde in it because it's designed not to go up in flames fast, um, and be a slower controlled burn with lower BTU is how they design those firefighter. Um, so, and there's a lot more oxygen for the fire to breathe on. It's going to jump from the mattress to other stuff to feed itself. Where in a crematorium you have a direct fuel source that gets it that hot. So there's no way that she would have been ashes. She was actually there was still body, uh, uh, a body, a corpse, um, at that point. But her remains, which are that of what was left of her earthly body, was flown to the Philippines.
And her family may have taken the remains and put them somewhere where nobody could get to them too.
Yep, it's very possible.
Now,
Yeah.
there's speculation on something else, and I'm not saying there's something weird to this at all. It could very easily be explained, but that's where you have a logical answer, and some people saying that they're not buying the logical answer. They think something else was going on. Um,
Hmm.
some reports are saying that when the fire department got to her place, her doors were locked. Well, the logical side could say, well, she had to have had her keys. So, more than likely, he used the keys to lock the door when he left to try to help keep people from just being able to go in and put the fire out the same way they would have to bust through or call somebody who had keys, like a manager of the building, maintenance, whatever.
Hmm.
But it would have made it a little more difficult to give more time, I guess, for the fire to keep going. Other people are saying there's nothing said about her keys being found, though, to explain that, just that her apartment door was found to be locked. So maybe some of the speculation of there being something more in the paranormal with that is because in the beginning they had no suspects, other than the note, which could have helped people's minds to, race a little bit once
Hmm.
some of the paranormal story with Miss Chua came out. I don't know, and
Yeah, he
I
could
agree.
have when he ran tossed the keys. You're right.
That's why I say I'm not saying there's something paranormal with the door, because I mean that has a very logical answer that could be there. But I always like to cover a lot of the speculations and stuff, and kind of throw out what all has been said. Hi, Penny,
Hi,
and
Penny.
Hello,
just kind
Penny.
of see what everybody thinks, because um, whether there's a logical answer or not, to me, it's still kind of interesting to see how some of these stories kind of also seem to take on a life of their own
They do, and you
public.
know, the older the case they are, and the more tabloids have come out and journalistic points of view spin what could have happened. Well, then people mistake that for fact versus
It's
an
all
opinion,
speculate.
an opinionated view. Yes, it's and over time, it becomes an urban fact versus
Right.
opinion. Um, now I've got a question. I'm gonna throw something out here, and we'll see what the listeners and the viewers think as well. Okay, so you have Remy and her husband
Hey,
Joe.
I'll be right back. I'm sorry.
You have Remy and her husband Joe. Okay, they were already close to. They were already close to Teresita, and who's to say that they didn't spin this whole, she inhabited my wife and she wanted just jewelry and stuff like that, when they actually were the ones to do this to her, and they invented the whole ghost aspect because they knew more than what they were letting on to begin with. Could it have been Remy and Joe?
Play the Jeopardy theme.
Yeah, I know, right? I need to get that downloaded. Well, thank you. Kathy says that's why I like this show. You
Yeah.
all do go over everything, and we do. We spend this our time researching. I thank God, and Phoenix and Rex both know this, but I'm sick right now. It started in the house. I'm about a day and a half behind everybody else, so I'm the one that's still sick in the house. So I took 2 days off of work, and uh, usually I work 65 hours a week. Plus, I produce podcasts and then research for this show. So that means a lot. That does mean a lot.
Yeah.
Kathy, I get that she would not have said anything, but eventually, they would have done enough investigating into Teresita's life to figure out there was a tie to Remy, you know, somehow, especially in the 70s. I mean, I know police work in the 70s wasn't what it is now, but somebody would have came out and says, "Oh yeah, she's got this friend named Remy Chewy and a husband Joe and all that stuff." I mean, it's just it's not debunking the whole or trying to debunk the whole. Okay, her ghost inhabited somebody to catch her murderer in the long run, but at first it was the theft. That was the biggest thing. She wanted her jewelry back, and the whole talisman thing, like Brandon when he was here, he says it's a very powerful thing, and they would have had to, like Brandon said, for a ghost to just without your permission possess your body for a short period of time, you have to be very close. Well, if Remy and Teresita were that close, she wouldn't have had to pick up and put up much of a fight because she would have trusted Remy, and Remy would know the ins and outs, her jewelry, stuff like that. Who's to say that they didn't give it to him and say, "Hey, anybody asks, you got these," or whatever. Maybe they could have had some blackmail on him because he was working in the morgue at the time. Maybe he had some other thefts. We don't know. But
Yeah,
that
because
that was that was kind of my thought. Like, okay, you guys all three work together. Teresita, Remy, and Alan, the guy that confessed. But you know, it's too cool. There's a lot of coincidences in the case, and if indeed it did happen, kudos for Teresita from speaking from beyond, and ultimately catching the guy. um, Even though it was just about the jewelry to begin with. It was something she was attached to. um,
go ahead.
but and she said yes, they would have been looked at for it, sure, but had alibis. Well, I mean, if me and I see where Kathy's coming from, but Rex will tell you I play devil's advocate a lot. you know, what if her and Joe just had their stories straight to begin with, and they call up three friends and say, "Hey, tell them we were at your party, or we were at a dinner party, or we all went out on the town at this time on this date." It makes it harder for a law enforcement officer to sit there and say, "No, you weren't." Back in the 70s, unless there was security camera footage.
No, Carol. There's been nothing said about him recording her
Nope.
um, during those episodes. That's why a lot of people have also speculated that this story was fabricated as far as the possession, because some people said it was too coincidental that they all three worked together, and Miss
That's a very good question.
Miss Chua just happens to know who it is, and what was taken, and the whole bit. So some people just completely threw out the possession part of the story and said no, she was involved in some way and was trying to cover her butt by claiming that she was possessed by Teresita, and that's how
Mhm.
she knows. So that's been one of the speculations floating around with people,
And
and that's
Joe was the only one to ever hear her and witness her being
right.
taken over by the host. So
That's why I like to go over, all these little
rabbit trails.
Yeah,
Yep.
because
And Carol has a good question. Did they try hypnosis? As far as what evidence I've
I
found,
have not seen that.
I've not seen it either. And even if they would have done a lie detector test, like they don't even admit them into court anymore because they're so unreliable. You have somebody that has a heart murmur, it's going to show that they're lying even though they're not. And they did figure that out through scientific studies, that it's not just the breathing, the cold clammy hands and stuff like that.
Yeah, they did,
It
Carol.
goes into physical things.
Now, here's another little interesting fact that I wrote down. In 1979, Remy Chua and her husband also had a book written about this particular story.
Hmm.
Uh, so, that kind of fed, I think, a little bit into some people wanting to discount the paranormal part and say, no, they had to know, um, you
There's
know,
more profit there than anything.
off it because they weren't caught. So now they're using this. But then on the other side, people are saying, see, this proves the paranormal because they're really speaking out about it and how this happened. It wasn't just the murder they're writing about. Their book is more focused on what happened to Remy Chua being possessed by Teresina. So,
And I agree with Carol too. She says in the 70s there were video recorders that maybe would have caught the voice change and inflection in her voice, and it really would have.
right.
Kathy said if she was taken over, she couldn't have said she was there. Do they have any kind of record after the fact of? And I'm assuming, Kathy, you're meaning, do you have any record after? Do they have any record of Remy after? I could see them doing a few interviews about it, but if it was that traumatic for Remy and Joe, it's not something I could see them honestly wanting to revisit.
No, I have not seen where anything else. I'm gonna tell you honestly, the only thing I have seen or the book is the book, um, and then a few shows like Unsolved Mysteries. However, I believe it was Unsolved Mysteries that changed the name of the Chuas. They said to protect them, even though interestingly enough, the same year they did the story is the same year that the Chuas wrote the book. But also, this is just a little side bit that I just threw in. Just I don't know. For some reason, I thought it was a little comical, but it was just about the detective, his co-workers, just to kind of show how people looked at the paranormal part of the story, and how some people reacted to it. A lot of the
Mhm.
officers he worked with would call and tease him and make him like the brunt of a lot of jokes for following a lead based on possession by a dead woman. And they would leave voice messages and stuff claiming to be dead people and stuff. That's the only
Yep.
thing I've seen is just, some jokes concerning the detective that would go around because back in the 70s, it was just considered so outlandish that started pursuing this stuff based on supposed possession by a dead woman. It was just, such a crazy idea. A lot of people would still look at it the same way today. However, it's far more accepted today than it was in the 70s. But that's
Yes.
all I've seen. No mediums called in, no nothing that way. Just a couple movies, shows like Unsolved Mysteries, and whatever. But Yeah, you're right, Kathy. It was pretty much considered all a hoax in the 70s. It was just a completely
Hmm.
different time. Rex, do you have anything to throw in on that, just as far as what you think it was like more in the 70s, like, I mean, I was born in 74, so I obviously don't have too many memories.
Um,
I'm just going by what I've learned over the years of how different things were in the 70s. And I'm not trying to call you old, but you probably have a few more recollections than I would have.
one or
Um,
two.
yeah, so, like, seriously, I'm not saying that trying to sound insulting or anything, but, you do deal more with the paranormal and, you probably do kind of remember more of what it was like in the 70s with people's ideas and things. So I didn't know if you could address, whether they would have, brought in mediums back then.
Um, they wouldn't actually bring them in. A lot of times, on most cases, they'll have people will call in and say they're mediums, and they'll give information that they've come across, that's come to them spiritually or supernaturally, and of course you have to take everything seriously that comes in, or you're not doing your job. But back then, I don't I don't recollect of anything that I've heard where that a police department or sheriff's department or a lawyer has contacted a medium to help solve a crime.
Yeah. Now, and I agree with Carol. I've seen, I don't know that it's the same one that she is talking about, but I'm thinking she is from the New Jersey area. There was a medium. Okay. Yeah, I don't remember her name, Carol. But there was a medium, and I believe she was from that area, but she did work a lot with police, and that might be the same woman. That we're talking about. I'm not sure, but I know there was a psychic medium that worked
Right.
a lot with police. So
And
I
that,
do
that
think
was,
the attitude has changed quite a bit from what it
oh,
was.
I
yeah.
do have an answer to Kathy's question, like Law with Trouble when she said, "Do they have any record after?" And there is. There were charges of fraud filed on the Chuas with suggestion that Remy and Showery hated one another and that the real motive
Oh
behind
yeah,
this
I did
quote
see that.
ghost, and that Showery's confession had been forced, but um, it was said later that however Remy had come by the information wasn't relevant to the issue, and they had believed that Showery was the real culprit.
Right. Well,
But
it did have the jewelry and stuff.
Yep, and I have other stuff still working on loading in the background. And searching databases for them outside of financial aspects and financial trouble, bankruptcy, stuff like that. That's pretty much what I'm coming up with now. And the fraud case was the fraud charge. Honestly, the fraud charge against the Shuas was never dropped or tried.
Hmm.
It's still
Yeah,
active.
Was it? Didn't she have a knife
it was stuck in
plunged
her
into her
butt.
too?
Yes.
Yeah, it
And
was.
that's how I was going to go on that. We're coming up on the hour mark, but I was going to go on that evidence as well. I'll go into it now. The fact of the matter, she had a butcher knife in her chest with a burning mattress on top. The oils that are on that knife from fingerprints and the soot, it would have been so easy to get fingerprints.
Yeah.
I thought about that too.
Right.
So we're going to take a short break here, guys. And when we come back, we'll get into it a little bit more. But in the meantime, hang out, get something to drink. We'll be back shortly. I love it every time I see it. He's gonna kill me for giving that to me, I swear.
Poor Brandon. You're freaking him out.
Carol.
That's so funny. So I have another little interesting tidbit. It was just an interesting thing that I saw. Not necessarily having well, it does have to do with the case, but not, you know. So at the time, one of the attorneys who defended Alan Showery, um, one of his attorneys was the sister of Illinois Governor James Thompson. So I just thought that was a little interesting there, you know. Not that that really has something to do with the actual case of what happened to her, but I don't know. It just something about it just seemed a little interesting to me. You know that he's supposed to be the governor, and his sister is defending, um, you know, the guy involved in this crime. Um,
Yes. So it makes you wonder if there was government influence on the backside too. Definitely.
Hmm.
And I mean, yeah, I could play devil's advocate on that too and be like, well, just because he's got a brother that's governor and he's a lawyer doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's a guy's profession. Um,
wait a minute. What's the guy's profession?
I said it just because the governor is his brother.
No, it's her. The attorneys.
Yeah, yeah, the attorney that was
Oh,
doesn't
well, she's
necessarily.
a girl.
Oh, her doesn't necessarily mean that it's him being an attorney and connected to the governor has anything to do with it just because he's in that profession.
Right. No, you just
It
threw me off because you said him, and I'm like, no, there's a woman who was the sister of the governor, but not a guy.
yeah no
But
but yeah that
yeah, we're on the same page, so we're good. Yeah, and I agree, Carol. It doesn't sound nice.
there's a lot of muddy water around this case to begin with. It's not as straight clean cut as what it, evidence I've found because there's not enough evidence. It's like they didn't search into it nearly enough. Like it was a clean cut, dry finger the guy and we're done. We have no physical evidence, and they were collecting physical evidence in the 70s. I mean,
Hmm.
this was 77, 1977. So, I mean, they were fingerprinting. They had the database. They could have pulled knife prints off the knife. They could have, you know, how did he get the mattress to go? Did he use accelerant? We don't know. And
There's no
if
information
you
really
use
out.
no, and if you use accelerant of any type, it leaves a chemical residue once burnt. We're taught to look for that. I mean, that's firefighter two training. Um, if it starts naturally, to give you an idea, if an outlet starts the fire, there will be a clear V pattern char from that. It's literally pointing. It's a chalice
See,
pointing
that's
down to the root of the fire.
the point of it. Yeah.
Yep. So we really don't have. They did an autopsy on her. Yes. Okay. Well, what are the toxicology results? You know.
There's nothing out.
Nope. It's
Yeah.
literally the most uh, A,
They
B, C,
really,
and D case.
Rex, just
I
interrupt. You don't have to raise your
Yeah.
hand.
What did Carol mean by blue protection?
Yeah, and Carol, as far as your question on the point of where the fire starts, you can normally see where I have heard of a few cases where they can't really determine the cause of the fire or where it originated from, but that's pretty unusual. Um,
Hmm.
there's fire investigators who come in, and that is really what they're trained to do is investigate the origins of the fire. And like I was only a volunteer, but I volunteered EMS and worked EMS, but on the fire side I was just a volunteer. But even then, we went through a little bit of the training to learn, how to pinpoint, like Dave was talking about, with the outlet situation, or if you start pouring gasoline through a house, you'll normally see the main point where it was started, and then
Mhm.
you can see where it trailed through the house. But you can normally kind of determine that. Um, and Rex, I have,
He also Carol. What did you mean by blue protection?
yeah, I see her comment. Yeah, because I would think that maybe that's another special.
Exactly.
Yeah, trail.
She's not
Yeah,
answering the question.
Okay.
they don't cover any of that. And so Carol, I'm gonna go out on a limb and just go because at one come all you say is blue protection. So I am assuming, and if I am wrong, definitely please correct me. But I'm assuming, you're questioning, could the police have been trying to cover something up in it? Um, I don't know, because on the front end, I would say there may not be anything to cover. On the other hand, I don't know that it would necessarily be blue protection, because I find it, but I do find it a little interesting that the governor's sister is also defending this guy. So could there be some kind of link that for some reason, um, maybe there was something more, or maybe not that this guy was so important, but maybe the sister was trying to move up the ranks. Maybe she was, had career goals. I don't know. Um, but on the front end of just the story itself, I mean, there was nothing to indicate that the police would have a real motivation to be trying to cover anything up.
No. And I get where Kathy's saying it's a big city, so they should have known how to investigate a crime scene.
Oh,
And
definitely.
I'm thinking that too. But I'm with Phoenix on it as well. It's just, you know, it's kind of hard for, you know, in my book, a law enforcement officer or a detective to sit there and say, well, we're going through this stuff, we're going to start figuring it out. Because honestly, usually what happens is a homicide team will go in, they'll take their photographs in the 70s. Now we're talking 1977, so you got to think of technology then. They'll collect what they can, and then turn around and, then you're going to have the fire marshal in there. They're going to be stomping around, tromping all over everything. And then you got cleanup crews that have to go in and clean everything up. No, DNA testing was not, it
Yeah.
would sit on a shelf for months at a time before they could get to it because the testing process was so slow. So then by the time all of this is said and done, you got Remy and Joe coming to the police saying, well, I was possessed. We know where her jewelry is. And they put pressure on him for the jewelry. He admits to killing her just because it was brought up she was dead
Right.
in the same time frame, and he admits to the murder. What more do they need to investigate? They got him. They got a confession.
Right. Plus,
I,
DNA testing didn't really advance until the 90s.
yep.
Most DNA testing up until the 90s was, I mean, if you just look at paternity tests in court, when it had to happen, DNA test, all the way around, I'm just using that for example, was just blood type. But they couldn't go and break it all down like they do today. And so, crime scenes were, kind of a similar thing as well. Is far more advanced now, where they can break everything down, and then they can put it in CODIS and run it all through. But yeah, the 70s was just a totally different time as far as they didn't even try to do, as far as I know, if they did, they have not released the information um, to even try to see if there was any blood found that they could try to type. And, if it's O positive blood at the scene, did it match the victim or Alan Showery? Hi, Tom. So,
Hi,
I mean,
Tom.
they just haven't really put any of this information out there, which I think in itself is interesting. But
Carol, no. They did an autopsy. She was not raped. It was staged to look like a sexual assault. And Kathy, yes, in the 70s, it was blood typing and hair sample matching. That was literally the infancy of DNA.
right, but they have not released that they even tried to do that. In fact, with the fire, there may not have even been anything that way. But Rex, what I was going to tell you is that there were several reports that started coming out by the people who were writing the book for the Chuas. They started coming out with information and stories about paranormal activity that was happening to them while trying to work on the book. They stated stories such as getting mysterious and weird calls. Although I couldn't find exact details of what they're calling mysterious or weird, just mysterious and weird calls. Or they'd be sitting in the office, and it always happened at the office. It didn't go home with them. It was always at the office where they were actually working on the information for the book. But said that they would be sitting there at their desk, and all of a sudden, papers with notes that were written on them would just fly across the room, and various things that way. So, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that if is that something that sounds plausible to you that could have happened if Teresita really did possess her friend? Does this sound like it would be plausible for something that would have happened, or what's your take?
I'm going to be like Dave and play the devil's advocate on it. I mean, yes, this all could have happened. I mean, I've actually seen it happen. But on the other hand, in order to sell the book, they're going to create all this, paranormal activity so people go out and buy the book. So on one hand, absolutely. On the other hand,
Maybe.
Okay,
Yeah.
I have another take on that. What if Remy and Joe are actually making and capitalizing on her name and her doing this, but they're actually the guilty party and she's trying to enact her revenge?
that's true. There's just like any case, whether the supernatural or non supernatural is brought into a case, there's always going to be speculation. Different.
Didn't mean to go that far.
You're going to have, you wouldn't believe when you're doing a murder case how many people will call in and say, I have a lead, I have information. And 99.9% of the time, it's nothing. So, yeah, you're right.
And one thing I've honestly found out investigating some of these true crime and cold cases, 99.9% of the time, the perpetrator that committed the crime always comes to the police and interjects themselves into the investigation, which is exactly what Remy did.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
That's true.
textbook.
Yeah. I'm gonna try to look something up real quick. Uh,
I mean, if you want the police to steer away from some way because you have lost control of the situation, the best thing to do is lead with false information and ghost trails. No
Yep.
pun intended. But if that's the case, she succeeded, and there are people that have before.
Oh yeah, and there will in the future as well.
Yep. So, strictly from a paranormal standpoint, I honestly was surprised. You know, she didn't say, you know, it wasn't a different voice. It was still her voice. It wasn't distorted or inflection or anything like that. Um, and you know, it's surprising to me that that never came up, because usually when you hear someone being possessed, you know, it tends to take on the mannerisms of that host, the words they use, the inflection, like we had talked about before, and that never came up. They they took her word for it, and they were like, okay,
Bless you, Phoenix.
let let's see if we can let's see if we can hypnotize you, or you know, get get a psychiatrist in here or something like that to, you know, do some further testing. I would have liked to seen that.
so I'm reading another site where it says that Remy Chua has said a few weeks after um, the murder and stuff, a coworker reported that Remy Chua had jokingly made the statement, "If there is no solution to her murder, she can come to me in a dream." Days later, Remy fell asleep in the hospital lounge and woke up to find Teresita standing over her. After that, Remy started to experience personality changes and horrible nightmares of being attacked and stabbed. One day, as she passed an orderly named Alan Showery in the hospital hall, she had a panic attack. And then it says 5 months later is when Remy's nightmares began to worsen, and that's where she started having the experiences where she was supposed to be possessed by Teresita. Um,
Mhm.
it says that Teresita's spirit frequently took possession of Remy's body to ask Jose Chua if he had gone to the police yet. So this one says it happened a few times. Another source has said twice. Um, but it said, you know, the one thing that's pretty consistent is that the last time the voice of Teresita replied, Alan Showery stole my jewelry and gave it to his girlfriend. They lived together. And that's when they went to the police. But according to this, coworkers had reported that there were personality changes within weeks. Um, and yes, Carol, she did invite him in. Co-workers did back his story that he was supposed to come over and look at Teresita's TV. Um, now, they had heard that from co-workers, and that's also what he stated. The problem was that he said he went and didn't have tools to work on it. Well, I'm not sure if you're going over to fix something, I would think you take some tools. Now, depending if you think it's A and it turns out to be B with the TV, he might not have the right tools. But by reports, he didn't take any tools and said
So I
he
just found something increasingly eerie to the point where I've got hair standing up on the back of my neck. So from the photo of what we thought was like a rock or something on her for her jewelry, and then she had a pearl ring, right?
Mhm.
It was actually a jade stone necklace. And I looked up paranormal meaning of a jade stone. It's highly renowned for its metaphysical magic, and it is often used as a tool for emotional healing, dream work, and connecting with higher realms. Back on the ground, and jade is also an amulet for good luck, a talisman for welcoming abundance, and a stone of sublime peace and well being. That is wow.
Oh, Carol, I think I misunderstood your question. I answered from the aspect, I think I misread it. You were saying, I think basically, you were trying to ask if she basically invited her friend Teresita in, basically, like giving her permission to come into her and take possession. I thought you were talking about Alan Shari. So I think I misunderstood what you were saying. So I apologize for that. Yeah, if that's correct that she made statements like that, then I would say she definitely gave permission for that to happen. So that would be my
Mhm.
take. But that's more Rex's area. And so, Rex, I'll let you address that. And then I have a question for you on the coworkers talking about Remy's personality changes while these dreams and visions were supposed to be happening, and what is your take on that?
Um, I'm gonna have to bow out and leave the show. So
Okay.
I'm sorry, I can't answer the question for you. I apologize, but thank you very much for having me on, and
Oh, absolutely.
I'm available. If you need me again for anything. But
Okay.
thank you everybody for letting me be on the show, and I'll talk to you guys later.
All right, love
Okay.
you, brother.
Love you
All
too.
right.
Okay, I I'm definitely in with that too. That it had to have been a talisman. I mean, and I'll pull it back up because um, if you look at it, it looks almost handmade with the clasp in the center and the cording. I bet she's had it with her most of, if not all of her life um, from the Philippines, the journey from her homeland. Um, it's just I could see if she was acting different and her mannerisms changing and stuff like that. Yes, uh, I could see that having an effect or being from possession and too much on Remy's earthly spirit. But at the same time, if someone ineffectively got away with murder and they're being haunted by their own guilt and reliving what they've done time and time again, then yes, their personality, mannerisms, temperament are going to change. Either way, temperament will change. I mean, you're constantly being bombarded by your dead friend and can't get restful sleep. Yes, your mannerisms are going to change, your tolerance is going to change, and your temperament. But also, you got the flip side of the coin too. If it was a act of rage, not necessarily quote unquote cold blooded, but a crime of passion, so to speak, and you have so much guilt and regret on you that you can't sleep at night, you can't get any rest. You're everywhere you turn, you're seeing it over and over again. then yes, that is going to psychologically and physically change you as well.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I have no doubt that coworkers probably did see some personality changes in her. Um, I'm just kind of not sure which way I go with it. I don't know.
Mhm.
I don't know that I'm leaning more towards Remy Chua being a part of it as such because I what would be her motivation? That hasn't come out either. She didn't get anything out of this. Well, and that depends because she did get a book and
Mhm.
her 15 minutes of fame, so to speak. But
And she got a certain person that there were several people from the hospital that said Remy and
it,
Alan were constantly at each other's throats. They loathed each other at
right.
work.
But
So she could have got rid of him.
if she had anything in it, you know, playing devil's advocate to some degree there, wouldn't he have ratted her out if he loathed her that much? I wouldn't keep silent. So
Yeah, but
it
at the same
whether
time, he had
it,
damning evidence against him. He was already at the apartment, left once, admitted that he was going to rob her.
right, right.
I mean,
That's
he already damned himself. So, do you really think an investigator's gonna or a detective's gonna sit there and say, "Oh, so now you want to bring this other person in to try and get them to take some of the blame"?
hmm
Isn't it really what truth lies with you type
right.
deal?
Yeah, and that's true, Kathy. And yeah, I mean, I do realize she got the book and the money from that.
Hmm.
Plus there's a movie out, um, and then some of the shows, that came out. So yeah, she got something. I don't know. It's just there are some aspects to it. I mean, it's pretty clear cut and dry as to who actually committed the crime, but there
Hmm.
are some other interesting aspects to the story. And yes, Carol. Well, yeah, he gave two confessions. The first one was in the police station before the first trial. But then when they went to court, he ended up not confessing in court. He pled not guilty, and that one was the mistrial for hung jury. And then when they went back to court again, and that was what 1979, February 23rd of 79, he pled guilty when they went to retry him. So the first confession was at the police station with Detective Statula. I know I'm butchering that. Statua. And the second was when they went to retry him.
Hmm.
But he didn't confess in the courthouse
No.
at the first trial. He was pleading not guilty at that point.
Yep. Yep. And one of the things that really hung the jury on the first trial was the fifth day of trial. Showery said that he had only confessed to the crime 2 years earlier after detectives had fed him information and threatened to arrest his pregnant girlfriend on murder charges as well. Um,
Correct.
and he contended that he had dinner with his girlfriend on the night of the murder before drinking and playing darts with a neighbor around 7:30. That trial ended January 6th of 79 in a mistrial with a deadlock jury. A month later, nearly 2 years after Voss's murder, Showery pled guilty to the killing while awaiting a new trial at the advice of his lawyers, who urged him not to take a gamble with another jury. He was sentenced to a total of 14 years for the murder, robbery, and arson. He was paroled from Stateville Correctional Center near Joliet, Illinois in 83. Um, though Showery served time for Boss's murder, questions still about the case still linger. For example, Remy, Showery, and Bassa were not strangers. They all worked in the very same department at Edgewater Hospital. Choa suspected Showery of making complaints about her quality of work at the hospital, and they always argued. Just one day before Chua's first confession, Chua admitted she believed Showery had made a prank phone call to her while at work. Her psychic symptoms followed and started within hours of discovering she just lost her job.
Wow.
And
I
the
didn't realize she
detective,
lost her job.
yep, she lost her
It
job
was
right before he actually pled guilty with his lawyers. Uh, and that she finally came out and said that 2 days after he pled. And the detective himself expressed criticism when it came to how Chua obtained the information about Showery and his alleged involvement, but believed nonetheless everything here is completely true. Those who have followed and written about the case over the years have offered their own theories, ranging from the possibility subconscious fear or aversion Chua may have had of Showery, or Chua witnessing or overhearing Showery talk about his involvement, but not knowing how to express the information. Others have held the story up as shining proof of paranormal phenomena. The Showery now is in his 70s. He's in California. He has kept his nose clean ever since he was paroled. I mean, not one blip on the radar.
Yeah, basically, he kind of became. Well, he shows up basically on the Census Bureau, right? But as far as anybody
Yeah,
that knew him, if you were to ask around, it's almost in a sense like he's kind of disappeared too. Like after that whole ordeal, like I take it like he's just kind of become a recluse. He's not been in any trouble, but neither is he
no,
out there putting himself out with everybody. He's not a social butterfly, as
no.
such. He's just kind of
And you're
kept
right, Carol.
himself.
The whole case is literally, it's like chicken or fish that's right on the edge of being good or bad. It just doesn't sit right.
If I question chicken or fish at all, it's going in the trash. I'm not chancing it.
And that's kind of where I am on this one. I'm like, man, there's too much. And when I found that article by the Tribune, and it was entered into evidence, that is exactly what
Yeah.
that's her, within hours of her finding out she lost her job at the hospital, she started having premonitions, hearing voices, going into this sleep where she'd become Teresita.
Right.
No.
Carol, as for your question about, was he Carol's comment. Um, so,
She lost her job because she was constantly bickering back and forth and fighting with him. She was doing less than subpar for what her job was supposed to entail, and leaving other people to pick it up. She had problems with authority at work. This is just stuff that I come across as the investigation into
Yeah,
her and stuff
I
like
just
that.
didn't
And
realize
the
that.
only reason she kept her job so long is because her husband Joe was a doctor of surgery.
Right. Yeah, and I knew that about losing the job. I just didn't realize till you said that the timing was that close to it.
Within hours.
Kathy, I think it was you. No, it was Carol. I'm sorry. Um, so when you asked about was he quiet before this case, I didn't see anything that said he was out there living a really wild life as such, but
Mm-mm.
I didn't see anything that said he was
He had
basically
absolutely no criminal record before this.
average, everyday person living his life, the way most people would. And after his release, he became such a recluse that people are saying they've never heard of anything. It's almost like he dropped off the face of the earth. And the only way Dave really found anything out about him still being alive, because at first we're thinking maybe he's dead and just hadn't
Yeah,
been back or
I had to
whatever.
Google his name and obituary, and it came up,
Right,
Alan Showery living in Riverside, and he is age 76 now.
right. So yeah, I mean, Dave had to do some digging to find out that he was even still alive. So there's a definite
I'm
difference
pretty sure Remy was picking
before
up her slack.
versus
Yeah.
after. And I just saw something in my notes I was going to say, and I don't know. I got sidetracked.
Yep.
Um,
And Carol, I think you're right. It was maybe she didn't like him at all, and she was, you know,
yeah,
pointing the finger at him. But
right.
there's nothing we have to go on. Like, okay,
Taking in her jewelry other than being in there.
yeah, and
If it's simply
okay,
just
what
finger,
happened in Remy and Teresita's relationship? Was words exchanged? Were they just
right?
at odds? We don't know because
Yeah,
nobody offered that information as to what the deal was, other than the fact that they all worked in the same department. And the only reason that Dr. John Chu did not really know Teresita is because he's a doctor of surgery. He really didn't go in that department.
right. Teresita was a respiratory therapist.
Hmm.
Uh, so of course, they can go in the operating room, but as an EMT, I had to do transport sometimes, and if we took a patient from one place to another, there were times we had to have a respiratory therapist go with the patient. If they were on a vent or different things. And of course, different states have different laws with that. But, they have it's a very specific specialty thing. So it's not like, she was just hanging out in the operating room all the time for her to know Mr. Chua. But yeah, I mean, it's a sad case because everybody talks about how quiet Teresita was. They said that, she was in school. I believe it was Loyola University.
Hmm.
Um, and she also, in her spare time, taught piano lessons in her apartment for a little extra cash. And like nobody had anything negative to say. Everybody who made comments about her, from everything I could find, talked about her like she was just a wonderful person, very quiet to herself, trying to make a little extra side cash, through piano lessons or different
Hmm.
things. um, but just kind of to herself. She never married. Said, they knew of her to maybe go out on a date or two maybe every year, but she was just, content to be at home, to go to work, focus on her job, and go home and just kind of be to herself. And she had a very small group of friends, and she was just very content with her life that way. Um, and then for the guy who was accused, Alan Showery, the girlfriend had told the detectives concerning the jewelry that they had been having some financial troubles, and um, he had not been able to get her anything for Christmas. And so the night of the murder, when he gave the girlfriend the jewelry, she stated that the jewelry was supposed to be belated Christmas gifts that he could not afford to get her at Christmas.
And Kathy made a very good point. His girlfriend has the jewelry. A lot of killers give jewelry to their ladies, so I just don't know. And
Yep,
we agree with you because this case has seriously, seriously muddy water.
right.
There's no way to weed yourself around it.
That's possible, Carol. Um, that he took him before the murders happened. Um,
Mhm.
all I know is he ended up in his confession, according to one story, stating that due to, he backed the girlfriend's story. Hi, Dina.
Hi,
Backed
Dina.
the girlfriend's story that they had been having financial hardships, and he stated his original intent was just to try to rob her and take some cash, but it didn't go quite as planned. He ended up attacking her and killing her, and then it only ended up with $30 cash. And so he took the jewelry to make it look more like a robbery, and try to throw police off that way, and then took her clothes off to then try to steer police away from that and make it look like the motivation was sexual.
Well, and
So he's kind of all over the place.
she said, Carol says those pieces don't look like they are something someone would wear every day. No,
No,
they might not. The pearl ring, maybe. And the only reason I'm going to go with the jade necklace is because honestly, it does look like something that was handmade talisman from when she was in the Philippines. And, you know, going back over what the jade stands for in the paranormal and spirituality, it's highly renowned for its metaphysical magic, often used as a tool for emotional healing, dream work, and connecting with higher realms. An amulet for good luck, a talisman for welcoming abundance, and a stone of sublime peace and well-being. My theory on that is she came here all on her own other than Remy, no family, no nothing. I If I was that far away from my family and this is the stuff I believed in, that this was going to make emotional healing, stuff like that, and bring me abundance and peace, I would wear it all the time. And like Kathy says, it's a piece of home. It's something on her all the time to remind her of home.
yeah, yeah.
And jade is a very powerful uh spiritual.
Dina might be able to throw a little
Yeah.
in now that she's in. Of course, she's missed it, up to now. So she has no idea what we're talking about with the jade necklace and the paranormal aspect of this story. Um,
Well, and we have 10 minutes left. I can run through it quick. So this gal Teresita, she was found stabbed in the chest with a butcher knife under a burning mattress when the fire department got there. Later on, the ghost of this gal inhabited her friend Remy, and told Remy's husband, who had her jewelry, which is what I just showed. One was a pearl ring, The other one was a piece of jade, um, and it ended up leading to the guy that all of them worked with. And it wasn't until they started questioning him about the fact, okay, you have the jewelry, your girlfriend had it. Well, I was going to rob her too, and all she had was $30. And then he confessed to her murder, setting her on fire, and you'll have to go back and watch it. But supposedly, she started getting these visions, her inhabiting her body, and telling Joe exactly the stuff that needed to be heard. And until they went to the police, it stayed between them two. Now, other facts of the matter are these visions and stuff did not start happening until hours after she had lost her job, because the guy that she pinned the guy that she claimed did everything is the one that kept reporting her at work.
Yeah. But the gist of it, Dina, if you have anything to say, you can either comment in the comments or jump in the show real quick, like Dave Salsa Rex. He just messaged me. Salsa Rex, sorry, Dave. I guess I can't tell the difference. We've only got a few minutes left, but yeah, that Teresita, the victim, her friend claims to have been possessed on a couple of occasions by Teresita. So, if you know anything about that you want to throw in, yes, we've got it. You're not that far from me, and it's horrible outside right now. We're having terrible weather. But
Yes, Remy, uh,
yes, both Remy
Carol,
and Teresita were respiratory therapists.
yep, and oh, I know he worked with the morgue, but there was other stuff he did too. What was his exact title?
Oh, Showery guy, Alan Showery. I thought he was an orderly.
Yeah, yep. So he would deal with them in the exact same department. Yep.
Yeah. Medina, if you have anything you want to throw in the comments about people being possessed by somebody, like that, and helping police, or anything you want to share about the significance of the jade. I mean, some people in the comments already talking about crystals, and stuff, but definitely feel free to throw anything in. Let's see, Kathy says, so here's another thing. Maybe her friend was mad at him and came through after that had happened too. Yeah, that's possible, Kathy. Yeah, some hospitals only allow certain things to be on your body when you're working.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's true because I know, like, I've always had my nails done. I've been going on a few months without, and it's driving me insane. But even when I did my clinicals, and when I was going through medic school, um, I had to take them off. I wasn't even allowed to wear, my acrylic nails in the ER where I did my clinicals.
Yep, and that's what we were thinking too. Is sounds like channeling. But she claimed to never have a uh, a paranormal bone in her body or anything like this. Has never happened to her before. It's just you'll have to go back and watch the show. This whole case reeks to high heaven. Like, it just does not make sense.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of questions. But yeah, Carol, you're right. There's a lot of stuff that people are not allowed to wear at work, in hospitals. Um, yeah, and Dina, it's real interesting. I know my daughter, she was working on the hospital for a patient. She had to move her badge because a patient tried to check her with it. Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
I believe it. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
A lot of crazy stuff happens.
So I want to let everybody know We have just about 5 minutes left in the show. Not a show you want to miss next week. We
Yeah.
have we have Jeff Mudgett coming on the show next week, and he wrote the book Bloodstains Redo. And Herman Webster Mudgett, if you'll remember from our first episode of H. Holmes, that was his original birth name. H. Holmes was Herman Webster Mudgett. And this book is intoxicating. It's such a great book, and it's shedding on to so much light. And if you guys get the chance, get on Hulu and watch American Ripper, and you will be floored. Jeff Mudgett and
Yeah.
the ex-CIA agent is literally taking Holmes' timeline step by step throughout Chicago when it went quiet and Jack the Ripper started. I'm not going to ruin it. I'm just not. It's just, yeah, it sucks to be you guys. You got to wait.
And so, Kathy, I just saw your comment that you haven't worked for 5 months, and it looks like you're going to start work next week.
Good. Awesome.
I'm so excited for you. Yeah, congratulations. I know that's always a good thing. I haven't worked since, well, I did go back for a short time. But I really haven't worked for a couple of years, just cost of daycare. And my husband's like, I got it. It's just, I'd be working for gas money basically after paying daycare for 2 kids. So I haven't worked, but there's times I miss having that extra income and money coming in my pocket.
Oh, yeah.
And
I complain about it. I complain about working 6 days a week and only having 4 days off a month, all the way until Easter when we're going to get a 3-day weekend. Turn around and do it all again until the 4th of July. And there's only one way to say it. They have us working harder than ugly stripper. They do.
And I say I haven't worked. I mean, I've been, of course, I was on another podcast before this one, and now I'm here.
Exactly, Dina. I agree. I'm
excited for you, Kathy. I'm really happy for you because I know, we all have bills to pay and things we want to do and need to get done. So congratulations, and definitely next week, let us know how it goes, what you think of it. And
yeah, absolutely.
Yes, Dina, I'm a mom. And of course, one of my grown daughters and her kids are here with another baby due any day now. So
when I was off for 6 weeks with my back and at home, I was going stir crazy. I was climbing the walls.
Yeah, there's times
my wife was ready to take out life insurance and make it look like an accident.
I think Ken was there with me because I ordered a new fireplace and desk and some things. And, he would get home from work about 5 o'clock and he wouldn't be done putting this stuff together till 10:30, 11 at night. Because, of course, I didn't buy cheap, simple stuff. I bought complicated stuff. And finally, I'm looking at him, I'm like, how bad do you hate me? Because he didn't even stop for dinner. This is straight working on it, trying to figure out these instructions. And he's eating dinner, at 11 o'clock when he's got to be at work at 6 o'clock in the morning. So, I was like, yeah, I'm heading for divorce court if I order anything else in like this.
Yep. But, and I was happy to get back to work. I didn't think they'd be working a 65 hours a week, but
yeah, that's how he works. But
I complain about it now until I get my check.
Yeah.
So make sure you guys tune in next week. Absolutely, be in early. Just be right there to hit that button.
Did you see Kathy's comment go?
Yeah.
Comments.
Firefighter.
I have to tell you, the firefighters I worked with never looked like the ones in the calendar.
No.
I always saw these firemen in the calendars and always wondered, where are they? Like
No kidding.
paid actors? Because I don't see them.
Yep. You won't. Especially in the Midwest when volunteer guys that all they do is sit around and drink beer until the pager goes off.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
but
thank
yeah,
you
make sure you're here
guys.
early, ready to go. It's gonna be phenomenal. I hope we have enough time, but if we don't, I guarantee you that Jeff will come back. And as Carol always says, remember to smile. Um, I
Dina.
I I love all of you guys in the comments, and I like the fact they argue with me. Like they make
Yeah,
me want to see it from their standpoint, and then I'm like, no, hold on, I get where you're coming from, but what about this?
I like that all the theories and comments, that all come. Um, Carol, Carol, isn't it 8:30 next week, Dave?
It's
Or did you
seven.
change the
It's
time?
nope. It's 7:30 Central Standard Time.
Okay. Yeah, Carol asked if it was 9. I was like, well, maybe
Thank
you
you, Evelyn.
needed to. So yeah, no, 8:30 Eastern time, 7:30 Central time.
Yep. So with that, we are at the end. We love you guys in the comments. Thank you. Next week is going to be phenomenal. Share, share, share it out. As soon as you get the notification that I've added the show to the lineup, and let's see if we can get double or triple digits in the watch section. That would be phenomenal. So, in
Yeah.
the meantime, keep a lookout for the big picture, look for the small stuff, and go over it twice so that you do not miss anything. And as always, be safe out there, especially you, Phoenix. Don't go out looking for the tornado in your front yard. We all know what you Kentuckians do.
Dina's going through it with us out here.
Standing on the front porch looking up. No, that's what we do
I
every day.
was. No, our tornado sirens. I was on video with Rex earlier. I know we're ending. I'll make it quick. But the tornado sirens started going off. My two little ones and my grandbabies started freaking out and running for
Oh,
the
I
end
know.
room. And I looked at Rex and said, "Our sirens are going off. I gotta go. My kids are
Yep.
freaking out."
Yep, and that's the way it goes. It is. But yes, be safe, you and Dina both. We love you guys. We'll see you next week when we have the
Dina.
grandson of Mudget.
Oh gosh, Dina. Yeah. Be safe, Dina. Thanks everyone for
Yes.
joining. See y'all next week.
Good night, guys.
Yeah. Good night.